Mason, 35, running ops at a logistics software firm. We sell freight systems so dull that success is silence and failure is screaming on the phone. Our stuff handles routing, reports, exception queues, and all the ugly back-office glue that keeps shipments visible. Nobody says thanks when everything flows. But the second tracking data disappears, everyone loses their mind. One contract basically keeps the company breathing. That deal belongs to our largest customer, a nationwide carrier with leverage for days and zero tolerance depending on the quarter. They're like 65% of our revenue, and most of our fake confidence lose them. And we're just desks, stale coffee, and executives making promises they can't secure. My team protects that account after sales goes out and sells fantasy timelines. No adult could hit. My title says operations, but the real job is catching disasters before invoices turn into lawsuits, client escalations, botched launches, emergency overrides, reconciliation fights. 2 a.m. calls from angry terminal managers. I'm not doing it solo because systems that matter don't depend on one burnout. My core guys are Eric Sloan, Nolan Price, and Victor Hale. Eric's 40 senior process analyst, spots broken workflows before dashboards even finish loading. Nolan's 33 implementation lead somehow keeps rollouts calm while everything underneath is on fire. Victor's 42 enterprise support lead can recognize client executives just from how they breathe on the phone. Together, we're the boring adults holding the line while louder teams chase applause. We're not flashy, not trendy, barely visible, but we're the reason clients don't walk when hubs misroute exceptions at 2 a.m. They call us before they call leadership. That trust came from years of ugly nights and getting decisions right under our old CEO, Martin Voss. That reality actually meant something. Martin ran things like a contractor who accidentally wandered into enterprise software if systems worked. He stayed out of the way if things broke. He wanted numbers, ownership, and a fix immediately not warm, but he respected revenue, stability, and the teams preventing public disasters. He once told me, ops is where the company stops pretending and starts paying for mistakes. Life under him was tough but predictable, and fair enough. We had room to act, budgets that made sense, and authority to fix problems before directors even noticed. Then Martin announces retirement in an email that reads like, maintenance downtime. Board immediately starts throwing around words like transformation, modernization, culture shift. 3 months later, they roll out the new CEO at a big company meeting. Her name's Celeste Warren, 37, polished, camera-ready, completely convinced of herself. Before us, she built a personal brand, mixing activism with executive buzzwords. Her LinkedIn calls her transformational, future-driven, and proudly feminist in leadership. That last part mattered because she never stopped saying it. Our HR director, Brianna Cole, latched onto her. Instantly, Brianna had spent years trying to matter, in a company where real problems were stubbornly operational. Now she finally had her moment. They start walking the office every day, smiling, observing people like we're test subjects. First changes seem harmless, which is always how expensive mistakes sneak in. Brianna rolls out mandatory discussion circles about emotional safety, inclusive language, collaborative communication. Meetings slowly stop being about bottlenecks and start being about how bottlenecks feel. People asked how decisions impact emotions before asking if they actually work. Ops gets special attention because our floor is mostly male, after years of turnover, not ideology, just how the industry shakes out in freight. Celeste keeps orbiting our bullpen like she found a symbolic villain. One afternoon, she says, our area feels heavily masculine, legacy-driven. Quietly exclusionary Eric immediately asks what that means in real terms, because he hates vague nonsense. Celeste just smiles and goes, power is felt before it's defined. We laugh, go back to work, assume reality will eventually check her. We're wrong about how long that takes. 6 weeks in, Celeste announces. A mandatory town hall title is Compensation, Equity, and Structural Renewal. Everyone packs into the main conference room, Brianna hovering next to the projector, like she's about to launch a rocket. Celeste walks up smiling, like she's unveiling a breakthrough, starts with praise, vision, accountability, all the soft setup before impact, then pivots into historical imbalance, inherited advantage, institutional correction, claims an internal review, found an unacceptable pay gap rooted in legacy. Gender bias, says we can't claim progress while rewarding systems shaped by yesterday's men. Then she drops the policy that nuked trust across every department that actually does real work. Starting next pay cycle, men in senior ops and technical roles take an 18% cut. Room goes dead silent. I can literally hear someone in marketing stop typing mid-keystroke. My first reaction isn't even anger, it's confusion because it sounds too stupid to be real. Celeste keeps talking like she's announcing scholarships, not targeted punishment, says the reclaim money will fund an equity pool for raises and fast-track promotions for women, says promotion criteria is changing too, because apparently performance alone reinforces masculine reward systems, introduces a new metric called emotional leadership. This thing will now affect raises, reviews, promotions. It includes allyship, relational awareness, inclusive language, psychological climate contributions. Brianna starts clapping before she's even finished explaining it, makes the silence feel even heavier. 18% isn't some symbolic number. That's mortgages, tuition, basic breathing room. But the money isn't even the worst part. The real insult is the message underneath: competence doesn't matter anymore. If ideology wants a sacrifice, we just got reclassified from critical operators to moral liabilities. Leadership can now financially correct us. Meeting ends in this low, cold murmur, quieter than yelling, but worse. Somehow guys in affected departments all look the same. Shock slowly turning into something more calculated. I go straight to my office, close the door, pull up. Revenue concentration models. If they cut our pay, sure. Spreadsheet looks nice for one quarter, if even two of us leave. The client smells instability before the next review call. If all four of us walk, that account starts bleeding, trust immediately. I send a request for a private meeting with Celeste. Figure I owe it one real attempt at a rational conversation. Spend that night building the cleanest case I can, market salary benchmarks, retention risks, succession gaps, client dependency, turnover cost. Next morning, I walk into her office carrying numbers and what's left of my patience. She greets me with that polished, camera-ready smile, Brianna sitting next to her with a tablet, looking excited for friction. I lay everything out, calm and direct, no emotion, no drama. Explain our salaries, match years of freight-specific expertise and crisis handling. Show her how much revenue is tied to that one client and how dependent they are on us. Tell her straight up, trust in freight attaches to people. Not branding client isn't just buying software. They're buying confidence when things break, when networks fail. They want answers immediately, not workshops about feelings. I tell her plainly that cutting pay based on gender will trigger exits, not because men are fragile, because professionals leave when identity becomes a penalty. She listens, nodding the whole time like she's turning this into a leadership story about herself. Then thanks me for my honesty and starts reframing everything into moral language. Says what I call merit is just old privilege repeated until it looks normal. Says my focus on continuity shows over-reliance on traditional male gatekeepers. Says companies dependent on individuals confuse control with excellence. Brianna jumps in, calls my concerns a textbook reaction to structural accountability. I try one more time because I need to know if she's reckless or just clueless. I tell her the client is a freight carrier. They don't care about ideology or branding narratives. They care about uptime, response speed, accurate reporting, and the right people answering. If leadership publicly devalues those people, departures are inevitable. She leans forward, finally drops the mentor tone, says, the company relied on myths of male indispensability for too long, then ends it clean. No one is irreplaceable, Mason. If some men leave, that's part of the reset. There it is, clear enough to kill any remaining trust. She understands the risk, she just doesn't care. I thank her for the meeting, stand up, leave before I say something useless. Walk straight to Eric, Nolan, and Victor. Look at them and say 3 words. It's over. Staying here just makes us idiots. None of them ask for details. They can see it on my face. That night, we meet at our usual bar, cheap beer, low lighting, nobody pretending anything matters. We don't yell, don't slam tables, don't act like we're in some revenge fantasy. We talk like guys who already know the outcome and just need a plan. We're leaving, not out of anger, but because trust got deliberately broken. Once leadership turns identity into a penalty, loyalty becomes expensive and dumb. We set 3 rules that night and stick to them. No threats, no emotional blow-ups, no sloppy exits that can be twisted. Later, we lock in new jobs first, resign clean, document everything, let fallout happen on its own. Market moves fast because people with freight ops experience don't stay available long within 10 days. We're deep into real interviews with multiple companies. Then the obvious move finally shows up. The client had already been thinking about pulling more operations in-house. We knew because Victor actually built relationships. While sales sent useless newsletters after the pay cut announcement, their questions get sharper. They never say anything outright, but experienced clients can smell instability immediately. I keep answers clean and professional. No gossip, no drama, just confirm leadership changes happened and continuity might become an issue. A week later, Daniel Mercer reaches out, asks if I'd talk about building an internal team on their side. They want less vendor dependency, more control, keep their network stable, plain version. They want the brains without paying a middle layer. Roles line up almost perfectly for all 4 of us, which makes the decision feel less like a choice and more like gravity. I'd head operational transition. Eric takes process, continuity. Nolan handles deployment and integration. Victor runs enterprise response directly with people he already knows better. Pay, actual authority, cleaner structure, 0 ideology. Circus by the end of the next week, all 4 offers are signed. We pick Monday morning to resign. Timing matters more than symbolism. Monday is when promises meet numbers and problems come. Do 10 a.m., we walk into HR together, 4 letters, no hesitation. Brianna looks up, sees all of us, and her usual energy just disappears. I set my resignation letter on her desk, calmly. Eric stacks his on top, Nolan adds his, Victor finishes the pile for the first time since Celeste showed up. Brianna looks normal, not confident, not excited, just worried. She asks what this is like. She doesn't understand what she's looking at. I tell her, 4 weeks notice, full transition. Support not for leadership, but to avoid wrecking the client. She's already calling Celeste before we even hit the hallway. Panic spreads fast. We get called into the CEO office while the rest of the floor pretends nothing's happening. Celeste looks angry, but not surprised. More like offended reality showed up. She accuses us of coordinating, retaliation. Implies we're trying to force her hand, I tell her calmly. This isn't leverage, just 4 independent decisions. She asks if a few unhappy men expect her to reverse policy. Victor answers before I can, same steady tone he uses with clients in crisis. We expect you to deal with the consequences of your decisions. Hits harder than yelling ever could, because calm sounds like truth. Celeste pivots, calls our timing irresponsible, disruptive, unprofessional. Nolan reminds her we gave notice, documentation, transition support. Despite everything says, if she wants unprofessional, she should look at gender-based penalties first. Her face goes red, tells us to leave, says she'll rebuild stronger next 4 weeks. Feels surreal. We keep every promise because documentation is everything. When blame starts flying, we build full handoff. Packages escalation paths, contact trees, exception handling guides, map out monthly dependencies, emergency overrides, common failure patterns, risky shortcuts. But there's a limit to what you can write down. You can explain how a system looks, not how it sounds, right before it breaks. Meanwhile, Celeste and Brianna rush to rebuild the team. Their way 2 junior managers get promoted with barely any real freight pressure experience, but they score high on culture alignment and emotional leadership. They also bring in an external director from high-end retail operations, dresses like he's about to guest on a podcast, not run freight systems. She talks with full confidence about redesigning masculine systems into humane, collaborative workflows in some other industry. Maybe that works in freight crisis management. She's basically a tourist with expensive confidence office mood shifts fast. Once our resignations become real people who clapped earlier, stop looking proud. Now they just look careful. Not because they suddenly care about fairness, because the adults are clearly leaving the room. Final week, the client starts going around leadership and coming straight to us, asking for ownership maps, named contacts, escalation limits, exact accountability after we're gone that tells you exactly what matters when real money's involved. Last day shows up quietly. No speeches, no cake, no fake appreciation. We hand in badges, pack boxes, shake hands, walk out standing in the parking lot. I feel relief more than anything once respect is gone. Leaving stops feeling like loss. It just feels like breathing again. Starting at the client feels completely different. Like stepping off a stage set into an actual engine room office is simple, focused. People asking real questions. Daniel Mercer gives us one directive: stabilize vendor reliance, build internal control, make sure nobody can hold us hostage again. We start mapping every dependency tied to operational visibility. First 2 weeks are heavy, technical, and refreshingly free of corporate theater. Then things start falling apart across town. Right on schedule, a former coworker still inside feeds Victor updates quietly. Nothing dramatic at first, just small signs. The new team doesn't understand the margin for error. They delay a routine exception calibration because they want to revisit assumptions collaboratively, translation. They postpone maintenance for a discussion about tone, then bad weather hits 3 major corridors, manual exceptions. Spike hard under us. Eric and I would have rebalanced priorities immediately. Nolan would sync timing, Victor would brief leadership before panic spreads. Instead, they hold a 90-minute alignment call about communication approach by the time they act. Backlog is already doubled. Client starts getting bad outputs, duplicate holds, missing reconciliation data, inconsistent exception, handling expensive, but still fixable if handled right. Then comes the real mistake: trying to clear backlog fast. The new director approves, a bulk rules. Update doesn't fully understand. It doesn't understand dependencies or downstream effects, pushes it live anyway. Conflicting logic hits, production reporting, breaks across major freight corridors. Client loses clear visibility into active shipments across a huge chunk of network. Nothing physically lost, but operational blindness in freight. Feels close enough phones blow up on the client side. Daniel watches the dashboards for maybe 10 seconds, then just says they triggered the breach clock. Company is now inside a formal service violation window, and the client is furious. Celeste reacts exactly how bad executives always do. Tries to control the narrative before fixing the problem, tells the client it's a temporary anomaly. During modernization efforts that buys almost zero time, because freight clients don't care about narratives, they care about outputs. Client immediately requests logs, escalation history, approvals, recovery timeline. Company stalls, probably hoping delay gives them time to rewrite the story. Then someone inside their new team makes it worse, suggests the old ops group left fragile systems, maybe even sabotage. Risk that move is suicidal because we documented everything, like lawyers were already involved. Client triggers the audit clause in the contract immediately. That clause had just been sitting there for years. Now it's loaded and aimed directly at leadership auditors, and engineers start going through everything: logs, approvals, handoffs, transition docs, and the picture is exactly what any competent person would expect. No sabotage, no traps, no hidden damage. Just inexperienced leadership making reckless changes while protecting image and ideology. Logs clearly show who approved the bulk update and who ignored the warnings. Escalation. Logs show hesitation, delays, confusion at every point that actually mattered. Policy trail makes it worse. Experienced operators get pay cuts. First replacements show up later with no real footing. That kills the narrative, even if Celeste keeps talking in polished paragraphs. Client doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate. They terminate the contract because immediately same day. Breach clauses get triggered. Full internalization gets accelerated in plain terms. They take the company's crown jewel and move it inside their own walls. With us running the transition, competence finally lines up with consequences. Company doesn't just lose a client, it loses. The only reason investors tolerated it, revenue shock hits instantly. Not gradual, not manageable, just catastrophic sales forecasts turn into fiction. Overnight, budgets collapse, growth plans evaporate, board calls an emergency meeting. While panic spreads faster than emails, Celeste realizes the ground is gone, so she does what leaders like her always do. Starts looking for someone else to carry the blame internally. She floats the idea that we built fragile systems, implies we took advantage of the transition for personal gain. If we were sloppy, that story might have worked. But ops people document everything because memory doesn't hold up in court. Every handoff doc, approval log, transition file, time-stamped email, lines up perfectly outside legal reviews. It all comes back with the only answer that matters. No sabotage, no defense, no way out. Should feel satisfying. But reality has better irony lined up. Celeste doesn't get dragged out or publicly destroyed. No dramatic ending, she gets the executive treatment, quiet meetings, careful wording, controlled exit. Everything designed to protect optics through a finance contact. I learned why she was really hired, not just culture talk. She was supposed to help prep the company for sale within about a year and a half, clean up optics cut, selective costs, make things look attractive to buyers, stage the company as modern and forward-facing. Instead, she ripped through structural supports and called them outdated. Problem is executive contracts. Expect failure and protect the people causing it. Parts of her payouts survive even after the main contract is gone. So, after wiping out the primary revenue stream, she still gets paid. Honestly, the most realistic part of the whole thing. And somehow, the most irritating, Brianna doesn't land as softly. HR gets cut early, once money starts bleeding, then culture hires, then chunks of marketing. The replacement ops leaders don't last long. Either gone after interviews, wrap up within 2 months. What's left of the company gets sold off, licensed or absorbed. Brand basically dies, just leftover code, paperwork, and angry reviews. Online, someone sends me a screenshot. Later, Celeste posting about it, calls it a bold transformation. FaZe talks about growth through challenge, never mentions the breach, never mentions losing the contract. Just smooth language over a crater, comments full of corporate types praising her resilience and leadership. That's when it finally becomes funny. Not when things broke, not when the contract died, not when the board scrambled. It's funny when I realize she can destroy a company and still brand the wreckage. Meanwhile, back in reality where freight actually moves, we build something better. Client gives us budget, authority, room to fix things properly. We simplify what the old company complicated for. Margin rebuild, response chains, tighten, change, control, cut out, vendor dependency layers, Eric redesigns, processes without pretending, sales promises are real. Nolan locks down deployment windows with actual authority, fewer interruptions. Fewer vanity projects, Victor runs, enterprise response the way it should have always been. Protect the client first. As for me, I finally get what I should have demanded years ago. Ownership of the work, alignment with consequences, leadership that respects competence instead of optics. Sometimes we still grab drinks after rough weeks, no speeches, no hero talk. We didn't stay because staying stopped making sense. Once leadership uses identity as punishment, there's nothing left to protect. Celeste thought she could shrink people into symbols, figured systems would keep running, because policy said. So, what she learned too late, real systems run on continuity and skill, on tired people answering phones when everything else is asleep. She tried to reduce us to numbers because it felt justified. Instead, she pushed us out. And once we left, everything followed gravity. That's the issue with corporate feminism. When it turns into branding, it doesn't fix reality. It just finds out which supports were actually holding things up. And by the time that's obvious, the damage is already done.